Good evening, everyone. I'm hoping everyone can hear okay. We are going to wait just a minute or so to get started here, as I think there are still a lot of people coming in. It's just about 5 o'clock, so we will get started in just a moment. I believe my admin team will be joining me as well, so hopefully they are on. Oh, there's Lanisha. Lanisha, can you hear the dinging too, or is it just me? I thought I shut it off, so.
No, I do not hear any dinging.
Okay. We were taking bets on how many people we would have on. Do you know how to tell, Lanisha, if it's recording?
It's recording because when I came in, well, at the top in the left-hand corner, it should say recording. There should be a recording button.
It doesn't have it but I can see on the more when I look at that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So it also, when I got on, it gave me a notification that I'm being recorded.
Gotcha.
And
I see it on the bottom. I can see it in the little bar.
Yep.
All right. Well, it's 5:01, so let's go ahead and get started. Greetings, everyone, and welcome. We are going to have our admin team say welcome and hello and give some information, and then we'll jump right into the presentation.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome. I am Lanisha Paddock. I am the principal here at the high school. We're so excited for you all to join us this evening. I am going to just briefly introduce our APs. Ms. Bussey, are you on the call?
Yes, I am. Hi, everybody. I'm Jessica Bussey. I am the assistant principal for 9th and 11th currently. So next year I will be 10th and 12th. Welcome to St. Louis Park High School.
Thanks so much. And Mr. Gogley, are you with us?
I am. Hello, I'm Mr. Goggle. I am the administrator for grades 10 and 12 this year. So, and starting my 4th year.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Goggle. So just a little bit about this time. It's super exciting time for our 8th grade students as they're coming in their new experience at the high school. Just want to kind of talk you through like planning. This is a time where families should be alongside their student and kind of making some really big decisions on courses they want to take, potential pathways that they might be considering for future coursework. So there's a lot of discussions that happen. I know I just did registration for my son this week as well. And it's kind of a fun experience to just kind of talk with your student and say, hey, what things are you interested in? What courses do you want to take? So really taking this time to sit and have conversation with your student and figuring out what their interests are, how the courses align with that, and just kind of plan for next year, but next year and beyond, because they're really going to continue to have to make choices based on what their interests are. We do want kids to schedule or choose classes wisely, because when we get to kind of finalizing schedules and registration and all of that, it not only informs the courses that we offer here, but it also we kind of limit schedule changes, right? Once we get to a certain point, we'll limit those schedule changes. So just be really cognizant of what courses you're registering for and have discussions, those interest-based discussions. What's your student interested in? What might they be interested in future? What are their potential pathways? And I think Ms. Nelson will go through that in a little bit. And we just want to thank you again for joining us. We're super excited to invite your students into our school next year. It's an exciting time. It can be kind of a nerve-wracking time as your students are growing up and moving on into the high school. And we are just thanking you all for being here, and we're excited to welcome your student next year.
Thanks, Lanisha. Great. We'll get right into it. So hello again, everyone. I'm Barb Nelson. I'm the 9th grade counselor. I have been in this position over 20 years. I hate to even say that because it sounds just a little crazy, but also a proud Park grad. So I have great memories of my time here as a student. And so the one good thing about COVID and distance learning is look what we can do. We can do these kinds of presentations where you don't have to set foot out of your home or car or whatever it is. We are up over 100 participants right now on this call, and that's probably a record. When we used to do these in person, we would never, have that many on site. So I'm really glad that we're able to reach out. A couple things to note. Yesterday after school, I was able to connect with the science teachers at the middle school. And sorry for that kind of shift. Originally, we had thought we were going to go through the advisory teachers at the middle school. But kind of on the science teachers' recommendation, because they kind of can control and know the messaging, because they've done this with me for a number of years, they decided it would be better to have things kind of go directly through them. So your students next week will see the short video introductions, which is similar to this presentation, in their science class. And I know today, and actually I think tomorrow too, there's some different schedules in the middle school based on some projects, some things they had going on. So some of your students may not have come home with the 2 handouts, but don't fear, they will get them at some point. And there was just a short little introduction video that some of them may have seen today. And it actually, I think I saw that Mr. Myers copied me on an email. He sent it to his students. So that is all information that they'll get. Again, it was just 2 handouts, which was an introduction, and I'll share later. And actually there's a slide here coming up that All of the information we've done updates on is all on the website, and a big shout out to Matt Thomas, who works with us from the District Office Communications Department, and to our admin team that really worked hard on getting all of this information updated. There's a new format to our course catalog this year that is very readable, and then all the forms and kind of information you need along with that on the website. And just to kind of put out there that students go through this registration process kind of in-house at this same time each year. So typically mid-February is when they're going to be making class choices for the next year. So at this time, they're really only making choices for 9th grade. We register for a full school year, at a time. So they're making those full year class decisions. My contact information is up there, and through this process, if you have questions at any time, feel free to reach out. So again, tonight our meeting, and then next week, students will hear the short presentations. We'll try to condense kind of the information they get. So it's not too long watching a video. We just hate to go into classes on the 24th and have to spend the whole time kind of talking at them. So we'll share information next week. Again, things like just general high school information, graduation requirements. So they kind of get a little bit of dose of that next week. You can certainly be looking, and maybe there's some students on here this evening. So welcome and hello to all of you. You can be looking at the website, look at the graduation requirements. I think it gets very overwhelming to kind of hear it all at once. And it is pretty easy because things are pretty well laid out as you go from year to year. And one of the things we've also added are some pathways documentation. So it helps kind of students who are looking and families at the big picture, kind of 9 through 12, to really plan out what they think they might want to do over the course of the next 4 years. So I'll indicate where those are located as well. So just a little bit of general information about the high school. We are operating under a semester-based system. So similar yet different. So the middle school is on quarters. So students get a grade each quarter. Our grades at the high school are semester-based grades. And so the quarter is really just a mid-semester marking time. It's not that the 2 quarter grades are blended together. It's a cumulative grade that when they finish in January at the end of semester 1, that's 1 credit for them if they pass the class at a D- or better. And then second semester goes all the way to the end of the school year. Our 7-period day, I actually just threw a slide in there just so you could see that if you are not acquainted with our schedule. This is what our daily schedule looks like. So Mondays and Fridays, we run a straight 7-period day schedule. 5th hour is our lunch hour. So dependent on what teacher you have one of 3 lunch periods. And then Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, we have something embedded into our day called Park Connections. So similar to advisory, or what used to be called, I think, Oriole time at the middle school, it's a time for teachers to connect in a smaller setting with students. It really grew out of, for us, during distance learning, we used to have a once a month advisory that was mainly focused on college and career readiness, and really coming back from distance learning, we felt like students needed to have a connection to staff at the high school in kind of a smaller setting. So last year we did 5 days a week of Park Connections, and each grade level was divided out with the teacher. And we transitioned this year to 3 days, so Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And a kind of fun, exciting change that we're just trying for the first time. So we have all of this. The Park Connections is kind of a combination of college and career readiness as well as social emotional learning. But we've added a couple different things. There's a win time, what I need time. So during that time of the day, students can reach out to go see teachers if they need to. And then there's an Action Thursdays. So something that we literally just started this past week for 3rd quarter, where kids get to pick a action, something that, it could be Uno, it could be quiet reading, yoga, time in the gym. So they choose this, make this selection for a quarter. So we're going to see how that goes and see if it's something we continue into next year. But I think it's been a fun change and something different to give some students and teachers and staff kind of some of that kind of relationship building and fun kind of during their day. So that Park Connections is just slotted in, and the classes are just shortened a little bit during that time. And then kind of what we do with our ninth graders, we have a program called the Barb program, Building Assets, Reducing Risks, that grew out of kind of our ninth grade program here that we've had for 20 years. It's now being replicated across the country. And so some components of that are blocking or teaming students together. So similar to a team approach that middle schools used to have. We have 3 classes. There are social studies, which is civics and econ in ninth grade, their English 9, and then their science 9, depending on which science level they choose. They have a team of teachers that has the same group of students all year long. So part of what happens during that team time is the support staff. So myself and a ninth grade social worker, as well as one of the administrators, are part of a meeting with the BAR teams weekly. We're able to celebrate things, talk about successes with students, and also talk about students of concern. So it's a way for us to really help support ninth graders as they transition to the high school. Our whole goal with it is to make sure, help ensure that ninth graders are successful, because all the research shows that if kids are successful, their ninth grade year, they're more likely to graduate on time, which is what we need, or what we would like. The BARB program, there'll be a little bit more about that in the fall, typically at freshman orientation, and you'll be able to join the PAC committee, the parent advised parent, is it PEAC, parent, what is it, Alicia, do you know? PEAC, a parent group here at the high school.
Yeah, it's PEAC. Parent
There
Engagement Advisory Council.
There we go. So that's certainly something that you can get connected with here at the high school as well. And just in terms of any students who may have special education needs or 504 accommodations plans, we are actively working with the case managers at the middle school and typically do a transition meeting with them, one, to make sure we have classes appropriate and kind of needs met, and then also just to make sure that if there's anything that needs to, that case managers at the high school need to know, we transition with all that information. And when they come to the high school, typically when teachers are back, case management assignments are done, and you can expect that case managers would reach out and kind of get in touch for that transition piece. And then similar with students with 504 plans, I work with you to kind of help with that transition piece and try to set up a time in the fall that we connect and touch base about that plan, because while things may operate similarly, there's a lot of things that are different, and we may need to change some of those accommodations to meet the students' needs at the high school. And then typically in the fall, we offer, we'll have a freshman orientation day. The last 2 years, given that we've gone through kind of situations with COVID, it's been a little different how we've done things. So hopefully we'll be back in a more traditional approach, but part of our freshman orientation is getting kids in the building. It's great to have them here. We run them through their schedule. They're able to actually walk through their 7-period day. We typically host some kind of activity fair, so they can be walking around, talking to kids that are active in different clubs and organizations. The robotics team might have their actual robot. The theater group brings out costumes and different things to have at their table. So it's really a time for kids to connect, and all the athletic groups as well have tables where they host things. So a great time for them to get connected and see the building and be in the building and kind of walk through their schedule. And then generally that same day in the evening, we've done a parent orientation, obviously geared at answering questions for parents. Both of these events have typically been, kind of the Wednesday or Thursday before school starts. It kind of depends on our school starting schedule. And we try to get that information out usually in May, so families can plan for that over the summer. And I'll be touching base or kind of talking about a little bit later in the presentation, honors classes, AP and IB, International Advanced Placement and International Baccalaureate. These are both programs that we have at the high school where students can take more rigorous courses. We could spend a whole, half a day session on either of those programs and talking about it. So this is just more of a broad brush overview of what you can expect kind of coming into high school. And as you get into the upper grade levels, we have more discussions about kind of all the enrichment opportunities that students can find here at the high school. So these are just some of the things in terms of classes. And one of the things we will do with your students is really stress that grades and credits matter. You know, I think a lot of students in middle school typically are like, oh, this doesn't count, it doesn't matter. And it's like, well, it actually does. Practice makes permanent. You know, we want them to be building good habits and skills to be able to come and step into high school and be successful. So we want to message to them that, you know, the minute they come in, they should be putting their best effort forward, because the grades and credits they get do start from the time they are in high school. So that's something we'll kind of stress with them as we do the presentations and are talking to them. One thing I neglected to mention just coming into this is I'm hoping I shut off the chat feature for now. So hopefully during the presentation, we'll answer your questions, and at the end, I'll try to turn it back on, and then we can kind of do questions that way as we go through, and I can kind of filter through if similar questions are coming up to kind of hit on more of that information as we go through. These are just a couple of screenshots. I had mentioned the high school website, and like I said, they did a great job of redoing the high school course catalog. So you can click and just download that so you have it to look through. In the course catalog, you're going to find descriptions of each course as well as the grade levels that they are available to, as well as any prerequisites for courses. And you'll notice when we get to kind of the registration planner sheet that things are pretty limited for 9th grade. We kind of have a core group of elective offerings for them. But you'll notice if you go in to look at either the 10th or 11th or 12th grade registration planner sheets, that students have a lot more options that are available to them when they go into those upper grade levels. So a lot more opportunities and different classes and things that open up kind of as they get into the higher grades. This is the actual shortened version of the website, but you can find it just by kind of searching around under the students section or academic section on our website. You can see the different kind of areas there, the timeline, the graduation requirements, the courses, department pathways, and so on. And so any of these things kind of click on and kind of play around in there to find what you would need. And I'll be showing some of the things, screenshots of them as we go through. So this is kind of the big piece of this tonight, is just introducing you to the graduation requirements for the high school. And so, you know, again, we are a semester-based system. Each class, so 1 credit, each class per semester equals 1 credit, and we require 46 semester credits to graduate. So realistically, we have a 7-period day, and you know, if you played that out, a student, if they took a full load all the way through, could earn 56 semester credits. Now, that being said, there are ways to have kind of a study hall. We realize that some students have a lot of things going on outside of school. Some students do better if they have that time or support time built in during the school day. So they can do a study hall as of right now with the way our schedule is built. If they wanted to, even if the students only earn 12 credits per year, they would have 48 by the time they graduate. So those 48 just have to be in the right places. We always tell students, you know, it's not that you can take 6 credits of art. You actually need different, you know, or maybe social studies is your thing. You can't just take classes in that area. They are divided into these different content areas. And so with English, for example, there is 8 credits required. So 4 years of English, and then 4 years of social studies. And with Minnesota standards, you look at, there's a civics requirement, world history, US history, and then senior social studies. There's some different options once students get to that year. With any of these, if students are going above and beyond, let's say they're doing AP world history as a sophomore, if they're exceeding that requirement, they have met the standard that is needed in that area. With both math and science, there's only 3 years or 6 credits required. I would say the majority of our students do take that 4th year. You know, looking at what we require as graduation requirements, if you look at the bottom, it very closely mirrors 4-year college or university requirements. And while that's not, we know that that's not the goal for all students. We want students to be prepared if that's what they choose to do as they go through school. We know when we talk about post-high school or college and career readiness, we're talking about all different options. There's students that go into 2-year community or technical colleges, private technical colleges, 4-year college or universities, military, all kinds of different apprenticeship and options like that. So when we're talking about that with students, we're kind of aware that there are so many different pathways after high school, but typically our high school, as well as any other public high school, would prepare you for being able to step into a 4-year college or university with what's required. With math and science, again, saying most students would take that 4th year. There is kind of a pathway or credits that are required in the 6 that are required. So with math, it's 3 years of math through advanced algebra or the equivalent. And then with science, it's required 1 year of biology, 1 year of chemistry or physics, and then 1 year of an elective science, which typically science 9, or if students are selecting the AP environmental science option, that would cover that. And then a general pathway, however, for science would be, taking science 9, chemistry, biology, and physics. And this is where I'm just going to jump ahead a slide to show you one of the things that's in the on the website, and we incorporated a number of years ago when families were really looking at making that 4-year plan. This is just an example of the math pathways, but this is done for all of the core subjects as well as even some of the elective areas. So it really shows you kind of from year to year, grade to grade, kind of that projected pathway. So if your student came in, which most students do in geometry as a 9th grader, if they're doing okay, they would maybe move into advanced algebra and then pre-calculus and on to kind of any number of choices their senior year. If they struggle in geometry their freshman year and maybe need some more review of algebra, intermediate algebra is what they would take as a 10th grader, and then advanced algebra and into pre-calc if they choose to do that their senior year. So we know that some students obviously come in at higher levels. They'll choose to take honors geometry, or they're ready for advanced algebra or honors advanced algebra. It kind of lays those pathways out. And then each year, like our teachers right now in the 9th, 10th, and 11th grade are helping prep students for registration for the following year. So teachers kind of help do that as well to guide students in terms of registration. And that's really right now, if your 8th graders have questions about placement, I would really encourage you to talk to current teachers, in their English or science or math, if you're considering kind of some of those honors options, which we'll talk about in just a little bit. Those teachers know your students well and can help make a good recommendation. And really, it's kind of talking about balance as well. So to get back credits, health and phy-ed, 1 credit is required in each of those areas. 1 credit with health is taken typically in 10th grade. If some of you have had older students, we kind of transitioned from an embedded health program where students took it each year over the 4 years back to a more traditional semester-long health class that they typically take in 10th grade. And then with phy-ed, it's 1 credit that's required in 9th grade, that's typically taken. And then there are a lot of phy-ed electives that kids can take as they get into the upper grade levels. And then with fine arts, there's 2 credits required. So think of fine arts as anything music related, band, orchestra, choir, and there's a lot of other classes in that arts area: photography, intro to art, drawing, painting, pottery. On one of the sheets I'm going to show you in just a second, it's indicated what classes count for fine arts, so you can kind of cross-reference that as you go through. And then there's also a class, information communication literacy, kind of a computer-based class where students are learning about Google Docs, as well as the Microsoft suite, Excel, PowerPoint, Word, using those and going back and forth between those. They'll do some presentations. There's been some programming, digital citizenship. So that's all part of a 1 credit class that is typically taken in 9th grade. What we've done with Park Connections, that kind of advisory that I've mentioned, is it's 1 credit the 4 years that students are here. So they earn 0.25 of a credit per year for their time in that Park Connections. And again, mostly social emotional learning, as well as the college and career readiness piece. And then electives is what makes up the balance of the graduation requirement. And you can see there's a number of different subject areas there. And generally, the biggest question we get is, does my student need to take a world language to graduate? And just to be clear, It is not a requirement for graduation from St. Louis Park High School. But again, kind of talking about that four-year college or university admission, typically what they require is 2 to 3 years of a single second language. So it's not taking French 1 and Spanish 1, trying German. It's having 2 to 3 years in one of those languages and getting to level 2 or through level 3. Now, if your student is taking Spanish, let's say in middle school and just started in middle school, not PSI, which is kind of a separate situation. In middle school, if they are successful in level 1, they could register for level 2 here, and that would be the equivalent of 2 years. Anyone looking at our transcript would realize that, acknowledge that they've gone through 2 years or levels and have been successful in that. If your student has been a student in the ESP program, they went through PSI, they would look to register for Spanish 7. And then we also have Spanish for heritage speakers. So Spanish for students whose native language is Spanish. And we have, so far I've offered years 1 and 2 of that, where students can take a Spanish class for native speakers. So those certainly you could see where if you took 4 years of a language here, that's 8 credits. That is a big chunk of your elective credits that's required. But again, it's up to students to determine how many years or levels they wish to go through. And it's really more about entrance to college, because it depends when you get to a college what they're going to require for depending on what degree program you're going to go after, whether or not you'll need to take a language at college. So we always encourage students, obviously the more prepared they can be, the better off they will be kind of passing any kind of placement or competency exam when they're in college. All right. This is the course options by pathway that I was mentioning, that I believe it's on the bottom here. There were couple of different things to say about this. The screenshot I have is the older one, but I should have replaced that. There's on the website, the sheet in there has a plus sign, and that indicates if it's a fine arts credit. But where this grew out of is really, we used to have these academy classes, and then we moved into this pathway, and you can see kind of the colors there: business, computer science and marketing, health science and human services, arts and communication, and engineering, manufacturing, and construction. It's really to help hopefully connect for students what they might be interested in post high school to some of the elective options we have here at the high school. And you can see on the upper right hand corner, the St. Louis Park Public Schools Career and College Readiness. There's kind of a different logo because we've had a business advisory board that kind of is part of our CTE director, the Career and Tech Ed director's purview. And so they really have worked on some different pathways and offering experiences and exposure to students through this advisory board. And one of the classes that grew out of that in the health science and human services area is this year offering a CNA course, so a certified nursing assistant course, which is super exciting. Kids can get a certification and be able to go out in the job market with that. So this just helps, like I said, students can look at it, see some of the different electives in those areas. And it doesn't mean you have to take everything in one of those areas. It's good for kids to kind of explore and kind of take some of the different things in different areas, but it just helps them kind of focus in and see where there are classes. The other thing that's indicated on the bottom, which is really great about things that we've done here, is there are both articulated college credits and concurrent college credits. And basically what that is, with an articulated college class, our teachers here are following the college curriculum, and if students get at or above a certain grade level, they are able to set foot on wherever that articulation agreement is. Let's say it's with Normandale. They set foot on that Normandale campus, and then they can take that credit with them to another university. So it helps start to build their college credits if they are able to do well in the class, and gives them a sense of what those classes are like. Now, with the concurrent classes, there's just a couple of those. They're working on more all the time. Those classes, you're actually starting a college transcript while you're sitting in the class. So you're registered at Normandale as well as at St. Louis Park High School in those concurrent enrollment classes. So some really good opportunities there for students to get a little sense of what it's like to have some of those post-high school classes and have the potential to earn some college credit at the same time. So when we get into, and if you don't have it in front of you, there's a registration planner sheet that looks like this. When we get into this and helping your students decide and you making some decisions with your students, they're choosing from one option from each of the core areas. So your English, social studies, science, and math. And then ninth graders automatically have the Phi-Ed and ICL, that's kind of the boxes checked for them. And then they're going to be choosing one of 4 options for their elective choices. So on the left-hand side is where the core courses are. Just want to jump ahead. Yeah, okay. So with the core courses, you can see that there is our English or honors English in the English section. There's also for our multilingual learners, a selection there, as well as special ed. If you're questioning those and need help with the case manager, that's something certainly to talk with the case manager right now. But again, we will be reviewing each of those students' registration plans and course requests as we transition them to the high school. With social studies, fixed class, this is, I think, the second year now that we've done this, where all students go into the same class and they have an honors option. So there's honors level projects that are spread throughout each semester. And if students complete typically 6 of 8 of those, they are able to get the honors designation on their transcript. So that's something that the teachers will spend more time talking with them about. So the majority of students in 9th grade are all in the same civics econ class. With science, Science 9 or AP Environmental Science, which I'll talk about in just a little bit, that would be the upper level or more challenging science class. And again, there's the MLL science as well as special ed. And then math, there are a variety of different classes there. Generally speaking, you know, most students are going into geometry or honors geometry, and then there are some students who have finished geometry at the middle school and are going into advanced algebra or choosing the honors advanced algebra and pre-calc. So, you know, again, talking to the current math teacher to get that advisement, the teacher should be kind of talking to the students about that and helping them plan. So moving to that second, the right-hand side, this is where it's just a little confusing, and I want to help clarify for you the different options that students have. So option number 1 is if students are taking a world language and a music. One thing to just point out on here on the sheet and any of the sheets going forward in high school is that whenever you see a box with the S1, S2, it means it's a full year course that students take both first and second semester. And then single boxes are 1 semester courses that kids can take. They select one of those, but the course itself could be offered either first or second semester. That really depends on how the master schedule gets built, which kind of happens mostly in the spring here and early summer before we lock things in. So that's why, you know, we really can't say, oh, pottery, we get a lot of requests for pottery. So you could have pottery 1 first semester, or you could have it second semester in your schedule. With option 1, however, if your student is planning to take a world language and a music, that's all they need to do. They select those and they are done. That is a full 7-period day with their English, social, math, science, and then either ICL or Phi-Ed, and then world language and their music. That is their 7 classes. They don't have room for anything else. So they're good. They can fill out their sheet and you can sign off on that. We really, with these pink sheets, would love to have them back, but ultimately what's put in the Power School for their course registration is what we will be going by. Sometimes we'll make notes or have notations on that the pink sheet that went home. There are extra copies that we sent over for Mr. Zutz to have at the middle school as well, if you need one of those. And of course, you can download it from the website. So moving forward then in options 2, 3, and 4, it's kind of different configurations of what the scheduling could look like. So in option 2, it would be a student who's planning to take a full year of a world language. So they select that, and then they select one of the elective options, their top choice, and then they would have a study hall. So students in options 2, 3, and 4, if they do not have a full music and world language, they would have one of a study hall, either first or second semester. And at this point, and kind of what we've done in the past is that if there's space available when it comes to the semester, they have study halls. So, we just started second semester. There were some freshmen who wanted to take a class instead of a study hall. They were able to kind of touch base with me and ask, and if there was space available, we were able to fit them into an elective. That's kind of what direction we're heading this year with the schedule. But in terms of kind of the situation with budgets and things going on, we'll see kind of if things change, you would be notified of that as we move forward in the scheduling process. So option 2, again, a world language and one of the electives and a study hall. Option 3 is if students are taking a music and want to do one of those elective options, and they would have a study hall. And then option 4 is a student selecting 2 or 3 of those elective classes, and knowing that they would have then 1 or 2 study halls, depending on what they selected. The kind of outlier things with this, like I just talked to a parent today who their student is contemplating taking 2 world languages. Those are things that can happen. We just need to, when the student's registering in class on the 24th, when the counselor checks their registration, we just will help them because there's a certain way we have to do that, putting it in the screens. There are not a lot of students that do that, but it is something that potentially could work in the schedule depending on when things are offered. And you'll notice on the very bottom, a couple things. One is regular study halls will be placed automatically. So students don't need to enter them. They're going to end up with 12, 13, or 14 course requests when they put that in on their screens. And I'll show you what that looks like in just a second. But just to be clear then on the bottom, the alternate choices. This is really important because what happens with the master schedule is there's always going to be conflicts and things that happen that are out of our control. There's only certain hours that certain courses are offered, and it might be scheduled up against an elective that your student wanted or needed. And so we ask that they put in, and this is typically in the case of options 2, 3, or 4, they put an alternate choice in. This helps us because counselors start back to school a couple of weeks before students do, and actually staff, and we are looking through any of the conflicts or issues with student schedules. And if students have an alternate choice, and let's say they weren't able to get woodworking because it's full, there were only so many sections offered, we would look to put them in a second or third choice. So students, we'd love to have them at least put one thing. If they could put 2 things, and there'll be a way for them to enter that actually in Power School on the registration screen. So they're able to put that. Typically, again, with world language and music, we're able to make those work just with the way the building is scheduled. But it's when students are looking at those singleton electives that it's very helpful for us to have their alternates. And we make every point to honor their first request, but sometimes there are times when, that just isn't able to happen. But hopefully if a student, is planning to take intro to art and they get pottery or photography, they're okay with that, and they're at least getting something in that fine arts area. This is what, once we turn this on in Power School for your students, you would be able to see on the left-hand side over here, there'll be a class registration tab or button area to press. And when kids press that, it brings them to this screen where on the right-hand side, there is a little pencil. When they click on that pencil, what happens is it opens up a window for them to make their choice, just like this. And we'll walk them through that literally subject by subject when we're with them at the middle school, because one, it really helps to cut down on the errors when we're there. We actually have them raise their hand. We check it before they submit it. Last year we did this virtually and we had to go back through all the registration requests just to double check that things were entered appropriately. So it's really nice to do this, walk them through it. There may be more than one screen to select from. So especially in areas like math, where there are a lot of different choices, there's going to be, right here where it shows a number, there might be a 2. And when they get to the elective screen, I think it's 6 or 8 screens that they scroll through that classes are listed alphabetically. So, again, we walk them through going from this screen, going through each of the subject areas and making their choices. On the bottom, it goes into electives and then extra special ed classes or MLL classes and kind of any other elective, the alternate choices. So again, we help them kind of walk through that and make sure they're doing everything correctly. If there's changes after the fact, that's certainly something we leave it open for a little bit. So you could go in with your student and double check what they put. But after a certain amount of time, we shut off the access for families to be able to make those changes. And it would just be something where you could email me and say, hey, we decided after thinking about things, we're gonna just do regular English instead of honors, or vice versa. And we can, up to a point, make those changes. But I know our administration is really ready to start looking in the numbers for next year in terms of making budget situations or having those conversations. So we really want to, like Lanisha said, have students make really good choices from the beginning, because that's going to be helpful for us moving forward as a school to schedule our building. So to get into a little conversation about honors and kind of the class choices that are available. There is a choice of any level of the classes. So honors English, civics we talked about, where it's an option for all students. There is advanced placement environmental science for 9th graders, and then the honors level of math. And even if you don't take any of these honors classes in 9th grade, it doesn't hold your student out of it at any future grade level. We aren't tracked in that way where kids have to do one class in 9th grade to be able to get into the next class. Years ago, we used to be it was a very kind of strict process to get into honors. And we had this selection process and a writing sample. And we've gone really the other direction from that, where students can self-select into any of those courses and be able to really think about what classes they're good at and where they want to challenge themselves and where they maybe don't. And so we know that not all kids are ready in 9th grade to step into those honors or advanced classes, and that they can choose that in 10th, 11th, or 12th grade in individual subject areas, which is really nice. Things to consider, and it's a little hard now because, I'm not sure how many students with MAP testing, if that got done for everybody in the last couple of years, but certainly things for you to consider when making these decisions with your child are 7th and 8th grade grades. How have they done in their classes? I can think of, just even off the top of my head, kids who are super high test takers, but don't do well grade wise, and vice versa. Kids that work really hard, but maybe don't have test scores. And that's why we went away from using those as kind of the sole thing that we looked at. We want families to make that decision based on what's going to be the best placement for their student. And certainly those things can help, but they aren't the be all end all. And we want to have really open access, so all kids have the opportunity to take the classes that they would like if it's at the higher levels. We typically have large numbers of students that are interested in honors, but I think it's really helped that we've gone away from the all or nothing component of honors. So again, that self-selection is really helpful. And I think really looking at not only what your students doing in school, but what they do outside of school. Are they someone who's involved in sports or religious activities? Are they working? Are there family obligations? Because it's really about that balance. It's a lot to come into high school, one, and then to step into those higher level courses and take that all on. There certainly are students that can handle that load and taking all of those courses at an honors AP level, but not all. And so it's really good to talk about that, think about that and what makes the most sense, because the one thing that is challenging is to make changes from honors to regular. Of course, we're going to work with you as a family and work with your student. We don't want them to be overwhelmed, but generally after a certain time, we've cut off those changes, and those changes would only happen then at the semester. And if students stay in a class for the first semester, that would be the grade they get and the grade that goes on their transcript. And so we always get the question, about is it better to take a regular class and get a higher grade versus an honors class and get a lower grade? And that's a really tricky question to answer, especially in the landscape of college admissions with our last couple of years of COVID education, distance learning and different things that have gone on, because it really is, colleges are kind of having to adapt as well. And they do look at transcripts, so they do look at the class choices that the students are making. So we always say take the level of courses that you can do well in, and that like probably a C+ is a tipping point. If a student's going to get below a C+ in an honors class, it might be better to consider taking a regular class, because that GPA, the grade point average, is still going to be important in terms of the college admission piece. And again, all of that depends on where students are looking to attend, what their goals are for after they graduate. So that's certainly something we can spend more time a lot of times during 9th grade. I, offer up to you right now, if there's ever a time you want to do kind of a 3-year planning session, going into 10th grade and looking at the rest of your high school career, to kind of consider that and look at those things and be planful about what you want to do in grades 10, 11, 12. Honors math is one thing that's a little different. In the past, they've had a specific performance contract, but I think they've kind of gone away from that and really are trying to work hard with students to keep them in the honors classes if they're selecting that. But I guess the one thing that you can really expect is a faster pace in these honors or AP classes. Things that you might have time to do in class, like typing an essay or reading, in a regular class, that would be kind of outside expectations in an honors or AP course. More note-taking, kind of longer reading assignments, that kind of thing. I know in the AP environmental science course, it's a lot more independence that's required there. So I'm trying to think of other questions I've had over the years with honors. I don't know if Jess or Lanisha have any other things to add about that. Just because I know that's kind of always something people have questions about, making their choices for their students. So we're kind of winding up, and I wanted to make sure to allow some time for questions. I was trying to keep this to an hour or less. So at this point, I will open up, if I can do this here, host and co-host. You'll be able to chat. If there are questions you'd like to throw out, what I'll try to do is just read them out, respond, and Jessica and Lanisha can feel free. I don't know if Todd's still on here, to be able to jump in and answer any of those, because we definitely want to make sure that you have your questions answered. You can also feel free to email me things, but my guess is if you have a question, maybe 5 other people do as well. So I hope this has been helpful in preparing you and your son or daughter, your child, for registration at the high school. We are super excited to have them here. It's a great place to be. So if there's any questions, feel free to kind of load them up, but maybe we did such a great job. You're going to be good. Oh, I see a few coming in. So world language requirements for college. Someone's wondering about world language requirements for college. So again, typically an entrance requirement is going to be 2 to 3 years of a single second language. Well, we don't put our middle school language on the high school transcript like some schools do or districts do. If a student completes Spanish 2, French 2 at our school and it's on our transcript, it's acknowledged and understood that they have completed 2 years or levels. So that is something that, as long as students are making it through level 2, level 3, they've met the entrance requirement. The college requirements, once students are there, are a little bit different, however. And any student that's going into the ESP program, it's going to say Spanish 7 on their transcript, and they have the option to do Spanish 7, 8, 9, or 10, which also leads to some AP Spanish potential credit or International Baccalaureate potential credit. When do students who are not at the middle school? I wondered that because we left this open. If you are a family that currently attends somewhere else or is open enrolling, those, I just had talked to them and they're starting to process those, and we'll get information out. We typically do new or returning families kind of in March and all the way through the end of the school year, but we'll try to get some of those appointments scheduled in March. If you're sitting through this and you're one of those families, however, we maybe could do a very short kind of even phone call or whatever once everything's processed. With the new enrollment center at the high school, when families enroll, they have to be delivered, and there's a whole different system that happens. So that's why we don't include you in this process. And we typically do a separate enrollment appointment like this with typically 6 or 8 families. And then we meet with you and go through the course request. If students have an IEP, are they limited to taking only special ed classes? Absolutely not. We actually have very few classes that are in special ed classes and pull-out classes. Most students are in mainstream classes with a co-taught, or if they have a skills class. So again, that's something, if you're not sure, you could check with a case manager, someone who can kind of help steer you in the right direction. But I would say students register for the mainstream class, we'll double check it and let you know, and then we'll indicate and kind of keep track of any students who need co-taught. That's all dictated by what's on the individual education plan for a student. So the team works together with you as the family to make sure we're making good decisions for high school classes. Middle school Spanish, again, that question kind of has come up. I've covered with it. It doesn't count, or the level counts, you're going into level 2 or 3. Someone's asking about what does SL or HL stand for next to the course. SL and HL are both IB, International Baccalaureate, terms that we use. SL is standard level, HL is higher level. I didn't really spend a lot of time with IB because there really aren't IB options in our 9th grade. If you're coming from our middle school, you're coming from a middle years program, so you're familiar with IB and kind of the language that goes along with that. And at the high school, it's a diploma program where students, there's one course out of sequence that kids start in 10th grade, but then it's mostly 11th and 12th grade that they take those IB courses. So SL and HL, typically standard level courses, are either, they could be 3 semester, they could be 1 year, 3 semester, or 2 year, kind of 4 semester courses. And HL courses are always 2 years in length. So that's what those SL and HL stand for. Yes, again, just to clarify, if your student was in Spanish or French, just the traditional way of taking that through middle school, if they are feeling confident with their skills and abilities, Spanish 2 is what they should register for. And it's a full year of the same level, Spanish 2. We have had students who really don't feel super good about their, especially coming off of distance learning last year, that retook Spanish 1. But I can tell you our language teachers have adjusted and kind of are adjusting to that as they go through and as they work with students. But yes, if your child is successful in going into the high school, they can go into Spanish 2, French 2. It actually now is going to be German 3. I'm guessing that's a little unclear to me as well, because they just changed our numbering system with German. So that part you kind of would want to read through and get recommendations from the teacher for German. Level 2 language. Yes, so level 2, they can enroll. Again, I've kind of been talking about that. So level 2 at that language. We do have some students too, if they are really motivated and they go to Concordia Language Village, let's say, over the summer, and then they accelerate a level and start maybe in a level 3. It gets a little tricky because of scheduling. Most of the time, grade levels are kind of clumped in different areas with the schedule, but typically there's enough sections of things that we can work around that. Someone is asking, is IB harder than AP? And that's, again, International Baccalaureate versus Advanced Placement. It's really hard because it's not that they're harder, it's just that they're taught in a different manner. And again, in the upper grade levels, in my 9th grade presentation, I get into this a little bit more. The theory or the logic has always been that AP is very linear. So you learn a lot of things not in as much depth, where IB, you learn less things, but in more depth. And of course, that international lens that's kind of used with the instructors and in that class. So it's not that one's harder or easier. They both have tests at the end of them to potentially earn college credit. And colleges, acknowledge both of them. It's not that they think one is better than the other. They're just different in how they're taught and kind of coordinated. If a student chooses option 1, which is taking a full year of music and a world language, do they get a study hall to have extra time for homework during the school day? No, students who are taking option 1, it is a full 7 classes each semester. So they would have no breaks in their day. They would have 7 classes. Someone asked about, is there a way to self-assess for the level of German? I would definitely probably, if you're questioning, talk to the teacher at the middle school, or Frau Fox is our teacher here at the high school, who's wonderful and could probably help with that. We, over the years, have now had several students coming from German immersion programs, so she helps kind of determine where those students should be. And each year she kind of takes a look along with the German teacher from the high school to navigate place students. Someone is asking about the options defined as fine arts. So again, if you go on the website and there's that pathways, the different career pathways on that sheet, not the one that I had in my PowerPoint, I need to change that up. They are indicated with a little plus sign. So you can see on there what classes are listed for the fine arts that meet the fine arts requirement. But generally anything music, band, orchestra, choir, world drumming, pottery, painting, any of the art classes, even theater arts counts for it, woodworking. So there are a lot of different classes that fulfill that requirement. And kids don't have to do it just in 9th grade. They have grades 9 through 12 to meet those requirements. And again, option 1, do they pick one elective? No. So students who are doing option 1 really just are making their music and world language choice. All they have to fill out is that top box, and they don't have to have any alternates either. I think I have made my way through all the questions. I know we still have many families online here. So unless there's any questions, I will kind of shut things down for the evening. But I really appreciate you guys being here. And it's always a fun time of year to meet with the 8th graders and talk to them about classes and be in the classroom with them and kind of get their energy. So we look forward to seeing them in a couple weeks. So take this next time to be able to talk through things, look at things, make decisions with your students. Oh, someone posted, oh, thanks Kelly O'Day. Thanks all, have a good evening.
Bye, thank you.
Bye, Barb.
Don't know who's saying bye. I didn't get a chance to look through all the names. I started to, and then I was like, oh, it was pages and pages. So
Barb, stop the recording so we don't have to edit.
it won't, where do I stop it? You should be able to too, Jess.
Can't.
Maybe if I do that. And
Up at the
stuff.
top.
Oh, there, now I can. I took off my